Here we are talking about materialistic things. Here we're talking about goals, ambitions. We're talking about achievements, targets, market, wherein everything is about money, trade, resources, management, everything material. How materialistic you are, Aditya? And how, according to you, can materialism help us in our lives when we are going through crisis or any other venture?
Right. I'm pretty materialistic. I live in London. I work as a management consultant. I earn a decent salary. I have a decent house that I live in. I have everything that it takes to make me comfortable. So in that sense, I'm as materialistic as anybody else. Material competence is useful. Now, when you get attached to some of this, then it becomes a little problematic. Now, you don't know whether you're attached to it unless it's taken away from you. So that's a hypothetical statement. But Swami Vivekananda, I remember reading in a book, would tell people that if you want to meditate, first ensure that you are physically strong. They would ask, but Swamiji, what's the connection between being physically strong and meditating? Why should we, he says, send children to the football field and then ask them to concentrate on their studies? They would ask, why is that necessary, Swamiji? He would say, see, imagine you're sitting down for meditation and your back is paining or your head is paining. Where is your concentration? Is that on your back and head, or is that on meditation? It's obviously on your back and head. So unless you keep your physical body fit, you cannot concentrate on mental and emotional aspects. Similarly, there is a level of material prosperity that you don't need to deny yourself. It helps. But getting caught in the loop of material prosperity enslaves you in that cycle. So if you have a strong desire to make a trip abroad, do the trip abroad. At that time, you don't need to feel guilty that there are so many people dying in poverty. Should I make a trip abroad? Because even if you don't make the trip abroad, your mind is still there. So you're going to be dejected and thinking about that for the next 1 week. So you're physically restricted yourself, but mentally you're still going through that turmoil, because that desire is like a virus. It only multiplies until you dispense it. So there are some dominant desires that we have that needs material dispensing to make ourselves happy. But the way in which you conduct that, we need to be careful, because most of the time when we engage materially, we are inflaming our desires even more. Now, in truth, we realize that when we like something, we automatically become dependent on it or attached to it. And when we are attached to it, we assume that the world owes us that, or we are entitled to that. And then the lack of it makes us unhappy, right? So material desires have that capacity to make us unhappy more than make us happy, because not that the object is bad or good by nature, because our mind gets used to what we have and we want more all the time. So as long as we are able to control the mind and see things in perspective and see things in proportion, the world is to be enjoyed. Why control ourselves? We need to enjoy relationships. We need to enjoy where we are. We need to enjoy nature. But we ourselves become the problem, because we grow attached to it, and therefore the joy reduces, but the dependency increases. Ideally, the dependency need not be there, and the joy is 100% pure.
Well, Aditya, but when we talk about happiness, we're talking about attachment, somewhere it links to spirituality, wherein we say that, it is all about something which is beyond yourself. It is about thinking something which is much beyond all these materialistic things and all. I have read hundreds of definitions in different books, novels, where not, but still till date, I'm totally not aware of what this term actually means and what correlation it has got with our thoughts, our feelings, and with the world.
Right. So spirituality, of course, is jumping into the deep end of the pool, which is where it's always more difficult to swim than the shallow end of the pool. And the reason is that spirituality has a very bad name in the last. I mean, I don't know how many ever years. It's probably always had a bad name because spirituality is associated with people leaving everything material and probably wearing a loin cloth and going off to seclusion, or it's reserved to older people after retirement, not knowing what to do with their lives. Now saying, let's be more spiritual. But in reality, spirituality is nothing but inquiry. Inquiry is just asking fundamental questions. It is having a more philosophical mindset of what is philosophy. Philosophy, if you break down the word, means philosophia, which is the love for knowledge, inquiry. Now, uh, spirituality is fundamentally accepting with humility. I don't know what I don't know. There are things that I don't know because there are questions that are unanswered. And one question that's unanswered and will always be unanswered is, what's the purpose of all this? You talked about purpose in life, but what is the purpose of life itself? Why are we alive? What is consciousness? How did this entire universe come into being? If it's the Big Bang, what happened before the Big Bang? Uh, why am I aware that I'm alive? And why is this phone not aware that it's alive? Where is that sense of I that ego comes in? So these are questions which are fundamental. Of course, to ask these questions, just like Vivekananda said, you cannot be mentally active if your back is paining. Similarly, you cannot be spiritually active if your mind is already turbulent on a worldly, everyday greed and pride and acquisition. And therefore, spirituality is seen as a negative thing. It is seen as something you have to let go of your job, you have to let go of your good house, your good car. No, it's not that. Spirituality is inquiry into questions. Now, there are two journeys in spirituality. One is moving from where we are today to where we want to be, which is the ideal state that we want to see ourselves in, right? More happy, more peaceful, in a better equation with the world, the ability to forgive people, the ability to love everybody. That's what all of us want. So spirituality, the first sense is to ask, how do I move from here to there? After you move there, spirituality, especially certain aspects of spirituality, like Vedanta, says that when you reach that state, when you are in perfect harmony with the world and yourself, then further questions blossom, which don't blossom today, which is, who am I? That doesn't blossom today because the question that blossoms in our mind today is more extroverted in nature. But when you're more peace and at calm with yourself, further questions blossom. What is the purpose? Who am I? And and that becomes a personal journey. Unless you are able to answer that to yourself, you may have everything in the world, you may be very peaceful, but there is still a void or the feeling of being hollow that is left in you. So the second journey in spirituality is moving from that stage to understanding who am I. So that's the Vedantic philosophy. But all other religions in the world, I'm sure, all philosophies in the world talk about the first journey that I talked about. How do I move from vice to virtue? How do I move from the state that I'm in today to the best version of myself, where I'm happy, but people coming in contact with me are also happy because of their interaction with me.
Does that mean disconnecting yourself from, like detaching from all the relations, from the people around you, the worldly things around you?
In fact, it's the contrary, isn't it, Anshu? Because if you constantly are a demand center, which is you want to ensure that all your needs are satisfied all the time, you're only putting more burden on everybody around you. But if you become a service center, or at least try it out, experiment it out, you find you become a magnet. There are more people around you. People want to be with you all the time. So when we transpose our ego to the world, it only makes us more isolated because we are putting our burden on others. When we are at peace with ourselves, when we are more self-sufficient, Anshu, it only makes us more engaged with the world, because now the world wants to deal with us. Now you become a service center which everybody wants to get attracted towards. And so you don't become more recluse. In fact, you become of more dynamic service to the world.
In such a beautiful manner, you have put this across. It is more like being a service provider. It's more like being a service center wherein you provide, but you don't expect. You fulfill your duty. You have done what was expected from you, but in return, you're not expecting anything.
Yeah. The sense of ego is a tricky customer, because when I spend half an hour advising somebody to do something and that person does not follow it, immediately my ego kicks in, saying, why did I waste my half an hour? So the next time he or she calls me, I try to act difficult to get, for example, but you didn't follow it next time. Now, that person is now bearing my burden. Now he has to explain himself to me. And this entire relationship becomes about me rather than about what we're talking about. If I don't get so angry or perturbed by the fact that he did not take my advice, he himself is probably going to tell me, Aditya, the reason I didn't do that is ABC. And then it gets clarified. And now he feels safe to be around me. Now, safety is very important. As a mother yourself, Anshu, you would know how important psychological safety is for a child. And when I consult organizations, Anshu, one of the things we work with CEOs and leadership teams is, how can you create a culture of psychological safety in your organization, where people are not afraid to fail, where people are not afraid to tell the truth. A lot of people in organizations know there is some corruption or wrong behavior happening somewhere around them, but they are scared to question that, because if I question that, I'll lose my job. If I question that, I won't get my promotion, right? Why is there no psychological safety? The moment an organization leaders act as a service center than a demand center, people around that leader have no fear to say, you know what, I've screwed up. You know what, I have not completed this task. I know my leader is not going to hold that against me or use that 1 year later in the performance feedback saying, that's why I'm not giving you a promotion. So when I have that feeling of safety, I am at my best. When I feel threatened, I'm at my worst. So when you are the best version of yourself, which is the first journey in spirituality, you're not becoming recluse. You are creating dynamism in people around you. With such a leader, also achieves the most productivity in their organization, also achieves the most sales in their organization, is also gets the quickest promotion in the organization, because they're able to understand that their job is to create psychological safety. And you cannot create psychological safety if you're egocentric in nature, if everything hurts you, if things should happen only the way you want it to happen. So having a lighter grip on life increases your ability to be more dynamic in life.
I guess that is equally applicable in our personal lives as well, the psychological safety, not just about the organizations, whether you talk about relationships, whether you talk about any domain, any zone of your life. This is one of the most important factor that we are looking forward to. That is psychological safety, wherein without any hesitation, without any fear, we are able to speak of whatever is there in our heart and our mind.